The G20 foreign ministers meet is set to begin in New Delhi. The meet comes at a crucial time for the world. The Russia-Ukraine war has entered its second year. Russia's relations with the West are at an all-time low and US-China tensions are peaking. Given the context, the G20 foreign ministers meet could have provided an important forum for dialogue and a possible rapprochement. But far from what is needed, US, Russia and China are all pulling in different directions. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said he will not meet his Russian or Chinese counterpart in New Delhi.
Second, at the G20, Russia and China will both be sending their foreign ministers. Do you plan to talk to them one-on-one or talk to them in a group setting? And what do you plan to say to them about the Ukraine war?
Yeah. Second part of the question first, no plans to see either at the G20, although I suspect that we'll certainly be in group sessions of one kind or another together.
Earlier in the week, Moscow said it expects balanced and consensus-based decisions to be made in the meetings, which it said is in the interest of all. The statement from Russian Foreign Ministry read, "We support India's G20 presidency in its commitment to promote a unifying agenda that will restore confidence in multilateral diplomacy and prevent the fragmentation of the global economy." Talking about multilateralism, the G20 bills itself as a premier forum for multilateral discussions. It brings together the world's major advanced and emerging economies. The G20 countries together represent around 90% of global GDP, 80% of global trade and 2/3 of the world's population. It is hence important that the talks in the forum run smoothly. With India as its president this year, it is seeking to convince Moscow and Beijing to go along with a consensus, especially on describing Russia's war in Ukraine, similar to the one reached by leaders of the group of 20 nations last year. A meeting of G20 finance ministers and central bank heads over the weekend failed to reach a consensus on the language to describe Russia's aggressions in Ukraine. This forced host India to issue a chair's summary instead of a traditional joint communique. So the question remains, will India be able to bridge the gap this time? And will a joint communique be released? Moments before the crucial G20 foreign ministers meet begins in New Delhi, let's take a look at what the world expects from the same. We bring the voices of foreign ministers from across the globe who spoke to WION ahead of the G20 meet in India and their expectations. Listen in.
What is your opinion about the role G20 can play this year in possibly bringing a resolution or some kind of negotiation and settlement to the Ukraine conflict?
We do hope from India, as G20 president this year, we do hope that India will play that same role, such as to make it possible to bring the international community to look at what's happening, to find the right responses, and always doing so whilst trying to bring people into line, everyone into line with international law. International law is the foundation of peace and stability across the world. India is committed to those principles. We're aware of that, and we count on India this year to continue the work that had been done last year by Indonesia.
Mr. Lavrov will also be there as a member of G20. Do you see an opportunity, perhaps, for a breakthrough and also moving forward, perhaps not during the meeting, but under India's presidency for G20, do you think that some kind of negotiation or breakthrough could be made in the Ukraine conflict?
G20 is an excellent forum to talk and to take common decisions on global issues. And of course, world peace is the most essential one. So it will be once again an excellent opportunity for all of us to defend the principles of the United Nations Charter, to defend the United Nations and to show our total opposition to an illegal war of aggression. I'm sure that we will do it.
The presidency of India in G20 is an opportunity for India as an important country to demonstrate its leadership and to end this war in line with the demands formulated by the UN General Assembly resolution. It's in the hands of India, essentially, how to handle this.
So you mentioned about Russia-Ukraine conflict that has been dominating every capital. How do you see India's role as a chair of the G20 in terms of resolving this ongoing conflict in Europe?
G20 presidency, it's a huge opportunity for India, and I'm very grateful for the way how you approach that. And the leadership in G20 is very important, and India shows that it is capable of that, and it's very logical.
Well, I think India plays an important role. It's the biggest democracy in the world. So, of course, it has the mandate to also to represent the democratic values and to represent the values all around the world. So for us, we see a lot of potential for the India's leadership, and India is already a global power in economics and in politics, and we really see that especially in this region, India can play a role to really show an example of leadership in the region.
While the foreign ministers of more than 24 nations assemble in New Delhi for the G20 meet, we at WION spoke to various experts on what are their expectations from the crucial two-day meet.
It seems like the conflict has no end in sight, as neither seems able to achieve its objectives, but neither side seems exhausted. So India's challenge will be to not have that conflict really take up all the oxygen in the room.
I think India's role is very important and very positive. Let me remind you that India started to buy Russian oil. It didn't before the conflict aggravated itself last year in Ukraine. India could be, I think, a very good intermediary.
Russia is an official nuclear weapons state. It is officially allowed to have nuclear weapons, and Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council with a veto right. And that's why the salience of what Russia is doing in Ukraine is so high. And that's why I think then all other issues become secondary, because it goes to the very core of the international order.
I think today and tomorrow's G20 foreign ministers meeting is actually a pretty good opportunity coming at a good time for the rest of the world to talk about important challenges, whether they stem from debt relief or climate change or health or the need to mobilize resources, many of the same agenda items that the finance ministers talked about several days ago. There's no question that great power competition has infected the G20, and as expected. So I would expect on that front continuing tension, but I don't expect the entire agenda to be derailed.